You are Locked On Chargers Postcast, part of Locked On Sports Los Angeles on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked On Chargers Postcast on the Locked On Sports LA YouTube channel, the place to hang out when every game is done. You can also listen on the Locked On Chargers podcast feed. I am Pete Fox, covering sports in LA dating back to 2007 for ESPN LA and NBC Sports Radio. Joined by the newly wedded Kenyon Barner. Got some new hardware on his left hand. How about that?
Yeah, added another ring to the collection.
How did all that go down? Like, the football game was garbage. We can talk about that later. Now, weddings, that's more fun.
And listen, it was exactly that. It was a whole lot of fun. Family, friends, everything in between. The food was phenomenal. The DJ was great. It was a dance battle that took place. It was just a great experience. One of the happiest days of my life. It was quite the day. You said what?
Open bar, of course, too, right?
See, we did it a little different. We put the bottles on the table so you could get as drunk as you wanted to get. So we had, the bottles was right there on the table.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, congrats on that. Tonight, this game between the Chargers and the Cardinals was a whole lot of mediocrity, in my opinion. It also felt a little bit like if you were going to put a headline on this game, much like the Trojans have played lately, snatching defeat from the jaws of victory. The Cardinals just barely did enough to win this game, and the Chargers really kind of handed it to them with just completely average play. When I look at this, I say the Chargers cannot. I was surprised to learn that the Chargers have not scored a touchdown in the second half since week 1 of the season, and that continues. They just look so very average, and a big part of it, as I put in the liner notes here on the background, they had a tough time running the ball and a tough time stopping the run. So when you look at this game, which one of those two was a bigger reason the Chargers lost this game? Their inability to run or their inability to stop the run? And specifically, what went into what the Cardinals were doing to stop and bottle up the Chargers run game so effectively? Because we all know that is their game plan. They want to rely on the run game. They were unable to do that tonight. What were they doing in Arizona for the Cardinals there with their game plan that did not allow the Chargers to run the ball?
They're just putting a body on a body and beating the man in front of them. As you said, the Chargers' primary point of strength is their run game. Everyone knows it. And so there was clearly a point of emphasis this week that we're not going to let JK run the ball. We're not going to let him get off and do what he's been doing these past couple of weeks. We're going to shut them down and we're going to make Herbert throw the ball. And that's exactly what they did. And so to answer your question, I think it was both the Chargers' inability to run the ball and the Cardinals' ability to stop it. They were equally as important to why Arizona came out on top of this game. But more than anything, one play doesn't necessarily lose or win a game, but you have to go back to Jalen Reagor's fumble going into the end zone. That it's a completely different ball game. He scores that touchdown. We're looking at this game completely different. We're looking at this game as a Chargers victory rather than a Chargers loss.
Yeah, I at first I was a little frustrated with that, but when you see the instant replay, slow motion, it's just bad luck. That's what it boils down to for the Chargers there. That fumble, or if he just steps out of bounds a quarter of an inch or less, it's Chargers ball. They score a touchdown. It's a different ball game for sure, but it didn't work out that way. And even if the fumble goes out of bounds as opposed to in the end zone, that works out to the Chargers' benefit. But again, it didn't work. And then you can also rewind a little bit. Earlier, they create a fumble or an interception rather on Teair Tart, and then he gets stripped. So from the standpoint of coaching, I would say that the Cardinals coaching staff did a much better job of coaching up their guys to be keyed in on stripping balls, because it worked not once but twice to their benefit. You barely see it work ever. It worked twice for them tonight. I was really, really surprised to see that and frustrated all at the same time.
possession. That was the weirdest, unnatural opening drives that I have ever seen. From the interception to Tart fumble, then to getting it back. It was just a crazy sequence of events. I don't think I've ever seen anything like that during my time playing, and definitely since I've been done.
Yeah, I was just like, wow, okay. I mean, I think the fact that they came out of that first quarter still scoreless was kind of working to the Chargers' benefit a little bit, but as you pointed out, they really should have scored there. The fact that they were struggling to run the ball really forced Herbert to throw the ball, and I thought that was working well. But they kept trying to run the ball. It's like, oh, well, it's fine. We're going to figure it out. No. And they kept saying this on the broadcast too. By the way, I don't know about you. I love Chris Fowler. I think he's fantastic. I don't give two hoots about Orlovsky, really. But those guys could not have been farther up Kyler Murray's butt than any two announcers I have ever seen. It was like they were his dad. I mean, it was unbelievable how much they were kissing ass.
We call them fanboys.
Oh, like, and look, I'll be honest, I have never been a Kyler Murray fan after he was drafted and made the whole stink about not wanting to talk to the media and saying out loud that he never reads the playbook. Obviously, I'd have to assume that changes at this point. He's been in the league for a few years. I'm assuming he has to read the playbook now, but maybe not. So I've never really been a huge fan, but Chris Fowler and Dan Orlovsky, huge fans. I mean,
huge. They made that clear.
They are the president of the Kyler Murray fan club. Fowler, I feel like, is the president. Orlovsky is maybe the treasurer or something. But man, they're in the fan club. All over him. And I don't know about you. I've never watched a whole lot of Kyler Murray. Obviously, when you see it on ESPN, you see the highlights of him being brilliant like he was on that running play. But you don't see the terrible technique throwing the ball, flat-footed, off the back foot, wounded ducks. I mean, they were like, oh, that
You've
ball
seen a lot of that. You've seen a lot of that.
Target, surprisingly off target. No, it wasn't surprising. His footwork is atrocious when he's standing in the pocket. I don't know what they're looking at. When he rolls out, he looks much better. He is a completely different quarterback on the run. That is where he's more comfortable running, obviously, and throwing the ball. But when he's sitting in the pocket, he's terrible. Not to mention, he is severely undersized, which we all know. But based on that, I think he makes lemonade out of lemons. But I don't know what Chris Fowler and Dan Orlovsky were looking at, because I do not see a brilliant quarterback in Kyler Murray. 14 of 26 for 145, but he did enough to get the win.
Pete, I'm not too sure. I don't think I know how you feel about Kyler Murray. I don't think I'm too sure.
I'm not a big fan. Look,
anything else you want to get off your chest?
I think if he was on my team, I'd feel a little different, obviously, but I don't see it. This is a frustrating loss because the Chargers, they did or had it, like they kind of had it within their grasp. This was one of those ones where they just let it get away, not being able to execute at a crucial time of the game. And coming into the game, there was talk about we need to tackle better. And guess what happens at the end of the game? What's his name? James Conner. They had him bottled up
in the middle of the
field. Yeah. And he slips free, breaks one tackle, breaks two tackles right after a cheap, unnecessary roughness call. Cheap in the sense that it was wrong.
I didn't agree with that. I didn't agree with that at all.
So
that was a terrible call, especially in that juncture of the game.
Yeah, just handed absolutely gift wrap for the Cardinals by the referees there. So so many parts of this game were frustrating. So we'll kind of get into breaking down some of the stuff where I feel like the Chargers were sitting on the doorstep or, set up to grab a lead, do something effective, score a touchdown, and didn't happen. So we'll get to that after the break. Chargers lose this one. They're now 3-3, 17-15, the final, to an Arizona Cardinals team that is not the most defensively stout team in the league. I mean, worst in the league on third down conversions, and the Chargers were not great on third down. So we'll get to that stat right after the break. He's Kenyon Barner, 10 years in the league, 3 rings. I'm Pete Fox. None of those things. But I've covered this team for a long time, and I got to say this was a weird one. As you pointed out, it was a bizarre loss, and it felt like in a win. So I don't know.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm jinxing all the football teams that I cover because they're not going in the right direction. It's the Locked On Chargers on the Locked On Sports LA YouTube channel, the place to hang out when every game is done. You can also listen wherever you find your podcasts on the Locked On Chargers podcast feed. All right, tonight's episode of the Locked On Chargers postcast is brought to you by our friends at BetterHelp. BetterHelp is online counseling. And where is the start of this thing? With Halloween right around the corner, let's have some. What is this? Okay, it's just ad lib. If you've benefited, that's for me. Like, again, we're back to the highlighting all of the parts that I'm not supposed to read. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online. It's designated to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire and get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists at any time for no additional costs. I've mentioned this before that, they want me to do a tie-in to Halloween and it being scary. Therapy can be scary. That is legit. And a lot of people think there are more reasons to not do it than there are to do it. But I'll tell you, I've done it a few times, both in person and online, and it's always been very helpful. And I didn't find too big a difference as far as the comfortability of being online with a therapist or being right there in the same room. So don't feel like it's a phone call. It is very personal and very effective. So you can overcome your fears with therapy by using BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon today and get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. Tonight's show also brought to you by FanDuel. NFL fans, you could start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You can get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. So download the app or go to the web and get on FanDuel. It's FanDuel.com. FanDuel.com, America's #1 sports book. All right. Chargers lose a tight one here. A mediocre game at its finest as the Cardinals squeak one out at home there at State Farm Field, 17-15. I was a little surprised by how many Charger fans there were there at the game in attendance, and they were doing their best to get the Chargers into this game, but they just couldn't get over the hump. Every time it felt like that last drive, 15 plays, 77 yards, over 8 minutes of possession, and they get down into the red zone, and that play that Jim Harbaugh was losing his mind over was an absolutely terrible call. Run a slant, run a crossing pattern, get the ball to one of your receivers that's been catching balls all day. Will Dissly, Josh Palmer, Ladd McConkey. No, I mean, it's even Semi Fehoko was a guy that was effective in the game, but you don't need to run a touchdown pass. They still could have gotten a first down. I don't know what was going on there. Did you see the play and think it was a good play, or am I right here?
I don't know what exactly they were looking for. Clearly there was some miscommunication between Herbert and the receiver for him to cut the route off as short as he did. Herbert expected him to go deep. There was a lot of questionable play calls within this game, as we talked about, trying to continue to run the ball, not being able to work. Obviously, you don't want to become one-dimensional. You want to mix it up, but I'm not confident in that last call, and in the fact that they were going as crazy as they were on the sideline. The ball was clear. It's just it was an ugly game, a very, very ugly game all the way around.
Kenny, I wanted to ask you about that. When a defense bottles up your run like that and you have absolutely no ability, is it best to keep the thought process going of let's just like it's going to break free at some time? We got to attempt to be two-dimensional, or is it best to just cut bait and say, look, we're going to throw the ball 3 out of 4 times, every series, and just kind of abandon the run? You said you don't want to, but what if you're forced to, as the Chargers were tonight?
Well, they clearly weren't forced because they kept doing it. But when you're in a situation like that, you don't want the defense to be able to pin their ears back and be able to know exactly what you're going to do. You have to run the ball to help your passing game. Your passing game has to work to help the run game. The Cardinals just did a hell of a job shutting the run down. And it didn't matter whether it was an outside run or an inside run. They just had their number. And there's games like this that take place to where a team just has your number. There's nothing that you can do about it. You can call the best plays. You can get creative. But when a team is having a day like the Cardinals were having on the ground, there's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah. Is there a way to, go deep in the playbook and, start getting creative with, things like end arounds or reverses or even double reverses? Or, I mean, there was a couple of times they ran JK out of the backfield and got him the ball on a little dump route that seemed to work pretty well. I was like, yeah, do more of those things. It's time to get creative because the old smash mouth football that you guys want to play is not working today.
Yeah, it didn't work. And they absolutely should have dove a little bit deeper into the playbook. Like you said, use Ladd in different ways. He's a quick, shifty guy. He has the ability to make guys miss. Figure out a way to get him the ball in motion, whether, like you said, a jet sweep, whether it's reverses, whatever it is. You have to figure out a way to become more creative in a game where your bread and butter is being shut down. You have to figure that out. And Greg Roman didn't do it. He stuck to his guns, tried to run the ball and run the ball and run the ball and run the ball. And it just didn't work out.
Yeah, part of it for me, credit to the Arizona defense for making life really tough on Justin Herbert, getting the ball to anybody not named Will Dissly, who, by the way, is only 28 years old. It looks like he's 48. Like, dude, shave that off. Get rid of that hair cul-de-sac.
Yeah,
What is that? I'm like, has that guy been in the league for
Pete,
15 years?
Are you okay today?
I'm just calling
Pete,
it like
are you okay today? Are you okay? I just
hey, man, my baseball team's in the World Series. Okay? We're all good.
All is well. All is well.
Yeah. I'm just like, dude, I mean, sometimes you got to cut bait on the hair. Like that is that's not a good look there. And but he played well tonight, so we'll give him credit and overlook the yarmulke. 8 catches for 81 yards. Josh Palmer 4 catches for 63 yards. Ladd McConkey 5 for 46. Semi Fehoko 3 for 45. So he did, in spite of not having Johnston, I thought he did a pretty good job of spreading the ball out. Justin Herbert, like he found the guys that he had and he made the most of it, but that was all kind of in the middle of the field. There wasn't a whole lot going on down there in the red zone. And maybe that has a lot to do with the fact that they couldn't run the ball. So as you said, the DBs and corners were pinning their ears back. And the other part that they were doing is they were, this was on the other side of the ball for the Cardinals. I found it interesting because we've talked about this before, but they seem to be using that 13 personnel with 3 tight ends on the line very effectively.
Listen, very effectively. Yeah, it you don't see 13 personnel too often anymore.
Oh, really?
But it's rare that 13 is called. When you get in a goal line situation, you do it there, but to have it out in open field, in the middle of the field, the way that they were using it, I thought it was brilliant and it worked. You couldn't really get a beat on what they were doing, whether it was running the ball or passing the ball. You just couldn't get a beat on it, and they used it effectively and used it to their advantage.
Yeah, speaking of goal lines, even though it wasn't on the goal line, the Chargers had a fantastic defensive stand, 3rd and 1 and 4th and 1. to stop the Cardinals and take over on downs, and of course turn it into a field goal. Another missed opportunity there. But all I could see when that was happening, not that I was rooting for this, I was pleased that the Cardinals chose not to give the ball to James Conner. But I'm like, here's a guy the Chargers have not been able to stop all night. You're in 3rd and short and 4th and short, and you're not giving him the ball. I'm like what is that? And you got Kyler Murray off the field. I'm like,
I didn't understand Kyler Murray being out of the game in those. Yeah, I didn't get that.
Just there was so much kind of questionable maneuvering tonight. I was like, all right, whatever. I'm like, what is going on here?
On both sides. Sides.
It really felt like they knew they were the secondary Monday night game. Like, oh, everyone's watching that other game with Tampa and Baltimore, 2-4-2 teams. No one's watching this game with sub 500 teams that can barely put
it just, just go out there and do whatever.
Right. It was like a scrimmage. It just felt like, I felt like I was this without a doubt. Kenyon, tell me if you were in the same boat. If we weren't being paid to watch this game, I would have been gone at halftime. I'm like, this game is a drag. I am working way too hard.
I might have turned the game off after that first possession.
I'm working way too hard with all the notes I took to try to piece this disaster together. I'm like, well, it was such a it was a fart. This is a fart in church. That's what this game was. It was stinky.
This was a ugly, nasty, dirty, grinded out game. I don't think either team, win or lose, should be proud of this game.
Yeah, I mean, we could say that. If I had to put a star on somebody on this game, it's either Justin Herbert or Will Dissly. I thought Will Dissly.
Those are the only two that it can go to.
Yeah, he did a really nice job of trying to keep them in the game. But correct me if I'm wrong. When they got down into the red zone, there was no opportunity at a touchdown. Did we even get close to scoring a touchdown?
No. Not a single time. Right? Not once. No.
Not nothing,
nothing at all.
I want to ask you this. I want to ask you this after the break. I want you to put on your OC hat and tell me what you would have done on that final drive there. It was the final drive for the Chargers, that 15-play, 77-yard drive that, surprisingly ended in a field goal. So we'll see how you would have handled that, because I don't know that I make the same call that these guys do. So we'll get your 2 cents and we'll compare and contrast thoughts on play calling. He's Kenyon Barner. I'm Pete Fox. This is the Locked On Chargers Postcast on the Locked On Sports LA YouTube channel, the place to hang out when every game is done. You can also listen wherever you find your podcasts on the Locked On Chargers podcast feed. That's where you find the daily guys doing the Locked On Chargers podcast every day. They will obviously be breaking this one down as well, so make sure you check them out. Tonight's episode of the Locked On Chargers Postcast is also brought to you by Hillsdale College. This is our most precious commodity, so don't waste it, or time is rather. Don't waste it scrolling through the same mind-numbing content for hours on your phone. How can you spend your time more wisely to improve yourself? History, economics, the great works of literature, the meaning of the U.S. Constitution. Did you study these things in school? If you didn't study all of them and just some of them, or even if you did and you're old like me and you want to know more about them or dig in a little deeper, you can get a refresher at Hillsdale College. Time and technology have changed a lot of things, but they've not changed basic fundamental truths about the world and our place in it. Here are just a few of the courses that are available. Hillsdale College is offering 40 free, that's right, free online courses, including Constitution 101, the meaning and history of the Constitution, Introduction to Free Economics. Boy, a lot of people could use that. The Great American Story, A Land of Hope, The Rise and Fall of the Roman Republic, and a brand new documentary-style course on Marxism, socialism, and communism. Go now to hillsdale.edu/lockedon to enroll. There's no cost, and it's easy to get started. Hillsdale, HILLSDALE.edu/lockedon to enroll and get started. Again, it's free to register. Hillsdale.edu/lockedon. All right, Chargers fall. They're back to 500, 17-15, 5 field goals from Dicker. The kicker continues to be, automatic, which is cool and all, but it'd be nice if we could mix in a touchdown. We should mention, Kenyon, that the 59-yarder, which got the scoring started, and would have been good from at least 5 to 6 yards more, ties the Chargers franchise record for the longest field goal in Chargers history. So that's pretty cool, but still haven't scored a touchdown.
Shout out to Dicker.
Yeah, he's I don't know how he makes it look so easy. I mean, he's definitely
he made it effortless.
Yeah, and he's not even close. I don't want to jinx him, but his balls, let's put it in a positive spin. His balls are usually right down the middle of the uprights. It's very rarely not splitting the uprights. The dude is so absolute money. But that final play, which ended in his 5th field goal of the night, our final drive rather, that was 8 minutes, and where Justin Herbert racked up a good portion of these 349 yards, because he was connecting with dudes left and right and really kind of moving the ball, unlike we'd seen him move the ball all night, and thought, okay, now we finally got something rolling here. Found a little, rhythm and mojo. But again, it fell apart, because I thought at that point in time, like, didn't we all know that if they kick another field goal for a 1-point lead at that point, and they leave around 2 minutes on the clock, that Kyler Murray, or really any quarterback, is going to drive their team down, set up a field goal, and we're going to lose the game? I was like,
there's a lot of time.
I don't care if you go for it on 4th down and come up empty. You're going to lose anyway. At least this way, you've got a shot at getting the first down and punching it in for a touchdown. Granted, that only gives them a 5-point lead, but how would you have handled that last play there if you had the OC hat on there?
Honestly, I would have used Lad, or I would have used JK a little bit different. I would have put Lad on an option route. Give him as much men as that they were playing. You have to put your guys in position. You have to understand where they're successful. Lad I said it earlier, is a very shifty guy. He's a great route runner, can get open, can catch the ball well. And also with a free release JK, I would allow him to work against their backers. We're not running the ball, so get my back out of there. Give me another valuable option in the pass game. So those are 2 things I would have did differently. I would have used Lad more on option routes, giving him access to work, whether it was the middle of the field, or free release in JK.
But more importantly, a 4th down in that position, deep in Cardinals territory, you kind of have to go for it right there, right? You got to roll the dice.
Yeah. Just the way the game is being played, like you said, 2 minutes of time. I think you go.
Yeah, the one thing I look at and I go, if the Chargers don't get that cheap, unnecessary roughness called against them, they might have had a shot. No, you don't think so?
Yeah.
Or you just don't like the call?
No, I do think so. I was shaking my head.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was shaking my head to the call. I just didn't agree with that. Refs sometimes need to take their whistle out of their mouth and just let it hang. It's okay. It's okay not to blow it. The announcers were saying, "Oh, well, the forceful contact." This is football. Nothing about that was unnecessary. Nothing about it was rough. This is the game of football. In a clutch moment, you just don't make that call.
Yeah, especially late in the game. But I feel like that was their undoing. If that call doesn't go against them, to me, I feel like there was a much different possibility, because again, Kyler was wild. He wasn't hitting his receivers. He had missed 2 passes right before that, to guys that were fairly open, through behind one guy and over another guy. So I feel like that was the real shot the Chargers had to win this game. Like, okay, the defense wasn't terrible. The offense was just anemic. So the defense did their job to the best of their ability to slow down this Cardinal team, and they just got this bad call went against them at a very crucial time of the game, and it was just too much for them to be able to overcome, because that was like they had them down within that put them over midfield, I think. So it made it a very short field for the Cardinals, and when you've got James Conner running the ball the way he does, or did rather.
Yeah.
It just felt like the Chargers were kind of like, wow, tonight's not our night. They kind of threw in the towel at that point, it felt like to me. But I look at this team right now and I say, I don't know where they go from here. Obviously, they're dealing with injuries like they're always dealing with injuries.
That's the first thing, though. You got to get healthy.
Yeah. Again, but like with regard to how the offensive line got beat tonight and had no ability to open up any lanes for JK to run the ball.
JK.
What's the game plan this week? In the facility, looking at tape, out on the practice field, getting ready for the Saints. What's the offensive line's marching orders this week to get ready to kind of not have a repeat performance next week of what we saw tonight on the offensive line?
You got to get back to the basics. Got to get back to moving your feet, shooting your hands. I think a lot of this week will be spent on basic fundamentals, which they did not have in this game. Guys were getting beat left and right. Herbert was constantly under pressure. So you have to get back to the basics. You got to get back to what has been working for you. Go back to the beginning of the season and kind of take a look at what you guys were doing then in comparison to what you're doing now, and make the adjustments. A lot of times as players, you got to look at yourself in the mirror, and you got to face the truth. And we were not good enough. I was not good enough. So how can I become better? It's more so, I think, personal rather than as from a team standpoint of going forward. No, as an individual, as a man, what am I going to do to make sure that the guy in front of me doesn't get to the quarterback?
Yeah, it just felt like there was no penetration. They couldn't get into the defensive line at all. The Cardinals defensive line was not allowing them to double team anybody. And when it becomes man on man, look, football to me can be very simple. When you start looking at what goes on in the offensive line, when they start pulling and doing all that double teaming and stuff, that's where it gets really complicated to me. Because when that's working well and you're watching the game, you're not focused on that. You're worrying about the running backs and the receivers and the quarterbacks and all that stuff. But the announcers usually do a fairly good job of highlighting that stuff, breaking it down and going, look what's happening here. Tonight, it was clearly obvious to see that the Charger O-line was getting beat. And, the lack of double teams, the lack of the ability to open up holes. It wasn't like they were sloppy and getting called for penalty. I think there was one false start, maybe two. But all in all, it was just, as you pointed out in the beginning, and they said it on the broadcast as well. They were just man on man. The Cardinals did a better job on the line, and they beat the Chargers up front all night long. And that's really what went into this game. The Chargers were not good on third down against the worst third down defensive team in the league. And as they also pointed out, the Cardinals defense in general is just not good. They've been routed by so many teams. Where's that number? They got beat up by the Commanders. They got beat up by the Rams. They beat the Rams. They got beat up by the Packers. It's like, they're not a great defensive team. The Chargers are making them look that way.
This is the NFL. 1 minute you're up, the next minute you're down. The worst team can have your number on that day. But to what you just said, this game was won and lost in the trenches. Not being able to protect, not being able to stop the run. The Cardinals did a great job, especially in the run game, of recreating a new line of scrimmage almost every time they ran the ball. This game was won and lost in the trenches.
Without a doubt. So we'll have to hope the Chargers get that cleaned up for next week as they take on the New Orleans Saints. That is a 1:00 start. That'll be back at SoFi, and we'll be right here on the Locked On Sports LA YouTube channel to break it down for you. Kenyon, thanks as always. Again, congrats on the nuptials. Are you still on your honeymoon? Did we interrupt your honeymoon for Monday Night Football?
No. I'm back in. We went on a little mini moon. We went out to Palm Springs, and
nice.
once football season is over, then we'll go do the real thing. Wifey didn't like that. I want you to understand that she did not like that.
It's funny you were out there. I was out there Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. We were probably there at the same time. It's still a little warm out there for October. High 90s.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
So, all right, cool, man. Well, congrats. And thank you as always. Good stuff. Hopefully we get a win, get back to talking about some good football instead of this, which was
that'd be nice.
Just a mess. Just a mess. For Kenyon Barner, I'm Pete Fox. This is the Locked On Chargers Postcast on the Locked On Sports LA YouTube channel, the place to hang out when every game is done. You can also listen wherever you find your podcasts on the Locked On Chargers podcast feed. Have a good night. We will talk to you next week.